courageous young man and woman for the honor of representing District 12 in the 74th Annual Hunger Games.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Omar and welcome back to the channel. We're going to be starting off the Hunger Games review series leading up to the Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and this was my first time rewatching the Hunger Games since I saw it in theaters. I am a big fan of the Hunger Games series. I've never read the books because, as some of you probably don't know, I'm not big on reading. The only thing I've ever read is the Playboy magazine and the Victoria's Secrets catalog. That is my extension when it comes down to reading. And even though the Hunger Games movies have been out since probably 2012, I still haven't read any other Hunger Games books, but I know how popular they were growing up because I remember my ASL teacher trying to get me to read the books even though they were like 500 pages long, and I'm not good with reading. So, I never picked up the book. So going into the Hunger Games, I was new to the franchise. I didn't know anything about it. And so I just went in with an open mind, didn't read any reviews, didn't have any expectations. So this was going to be a perfect opportunity for me to not compare the books to the movies, even though I never even do that. The only time that I ever did that was with the second Percy Jackson film, and that was just a absolute train wreck. So in the Hunger Games, you have a televised competition in which 2 teenagers from each of the 12 districts of Panem are chosen at random to fight to the death. Katniss Everdeen voluntarily takes her young sister's place in the Hunger Games, and she is paired up with Peeta, played by Josh Hutcherson. And I remember coming out of this really enjoying my time. And the thing that I absolutely love about this film, and really the second film as well, is the fact that it takes its time to really flesh out this world and actually bring you into this world. For somebody that has never read the books, I think this is a perfect introduction to this world because you're introduced to these characters. You get to know what this world is like, where we are coming from, and how really vicious the games actually gets. Because once we get into the games, that is where a lot of people were probably a little bit concerned, because a lot of people were probably hoping that this would be a YA version of Battle Royale. And to a certain degree, you actually do get that, because I was really surprised at how violent they actually get, especially when we are tossed into the games and you see how everybody is just fighting to the death. Because there are a lot of moments in here where they're tiptoeing that line of going into our territory. Even though it is a little bit sanitized, you still get to feel that energy. And I know a lot of people are not a big fan of the shaky cam perspective. When we first get tossed into the games, I think it works immediately. You are seeing the game through Katniss's eyes, because this is the first time that she's been in here, and I think Jennifer Lawrence is great at Katniss. It took me a little while for me to get used to her character, because at first you see where she is coming from. She's trying to protect her little sister from not going into the games so that she can't die. Because the way that we saw the beginning of the games with her in her perspective shot, I thought it was done well, because you feel that frantic energy, you feel that sense of dread, and you kind of feel what she's going through at that moment. And I really love the relationship that they slowly built between her and Rue. That was the shocking moment for me, was the death of Rue. I thought it was handled very well. And even when it comes down to the fake relationship between her and Peeta, I think for this first film, you're not really supposed to buy that relationship, because it is just a staged production. And that is where the love triangle kind of forms. For me, I was never the biggest fan of the love triangle. I am not the biggest fan when it comes down to love triangles. But once we get tossed into the games, you see how violent everybody gets, how savage everything gets. And the shaky cam, at times, it does wear out for me a little bit. I think the thing that holds this movie together is us going back to Stanley Tucci and Toby Jones. I think that pair in this movie works absolutely great. I think it adds a level of levity when you have a lot of these things going on and you're trying to find that perfect balance. I think what Gary Ross did with this first film, I think he found the perfect balance of having that heaviness, but it also found that perfect level of levity. So it's balanced just enough so it doesn't get too heavy for those. But I think the real scene stealer of this film is Woody Harrelson as Haymitch. Even though he doesn't get a lot of exploration, you kind of feel where he's at in this point of life, because it feels like he's having survival skills from his Hunger Games. And Woody Harrelson throughout the entire series is really the highlight. I really love the way that he was handled. You actually do see what he's actually feeling and where he is at this point in life. And even though there is a lot for me to enjoy, even on this rewatch, this movie really hasn't aged for me as much as I thought it would have. Because when I first saw it back in 2012, I absolutely fell in love with this movie, and I was really looking forward to Catching Fire. However, going back and rewatching, a couple of things that really stand out to me is a lot of the shaky cam. While I love how they use the shaky cam in the beginning as we are getting into the actual Hunger Games, and we're seeing the games through Katniss's eyes, I think that is where the shaky cam works. But as we move on, that is something that started getting a little bit tired for me, and it doesn't really hold up. Also, I absolutely love Alexander Ludwig, and I was really surprised to see him in this movie because it had been a long while since I had seen him on screen. But his little crew is something that hasn't aged well for me. I think they are a little bit too cartoony, and whether they're supposed to be like that, it just didn't work for me. I thought it was a little bit over the top and it didn't fit for me personally. It's just one of those things where it just didn't age well for me. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the love triangle, I am not able to buy the relationship between Liam Hemsworth and Jennifer Lawrence in this movie or as we continue on in the series, because Liam Hemsworth is not the best. And you don't feel that chemistry between those two. Those are just a couple of things that really hasn't aged well for me personally since the first time that I actually saw it. But going back and rewatching this film, I still enjoy a lot of it. I think it still has the same effect that I had when I first saw it when it comes down to how violent that games actually get, with tiptoeing that line into going into that R-rated territory. Plus also the setup of this world and you getting used to this world, seeing where everybody is in this point of life and how they're living. But those are my thoughts on the Hunger Games. Are you guys excited for the Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? And has this movie aged well for you since you first saw it? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys soon.